Hello everyone, welcome to budget series. This is class number 3, budget 24-25. So we all know that today Finance Minister Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman has announced the Union budget, and this is an interim budget, and by the way this is also an vote on account. So what is the difference between interim budget and vote on account? I already said in my first class. Interim budget is for a short time and it is nowhere mentioned in the constitution. Vote on account on the other side is mentioned in Article 116 of the Indian Constitution, and it is a provision which is available for the governments, that may be any government, to just present to the parliament what are the expenses that they are going to have for a temporary period. The 18th Lok Sabha is going to end its tenure on July, or the new government is going to be formed by the end of July. So for the months of April, May, June and July, for 4 months, the government of India wants some expenses, and for that they have presented this year budget as vote on account budget. Now what is the provision for vote on account? Whenever there is vote on account, government doesn't require to have, or parliament doesn't require to have to vote for grants. So this is the difference. So in the vote on account, there is no requirement for voting of grants, but whereas the other side, interim budget is a budget which is presented for a short period, that is for 4 months this year, and then here it is not mentioned in the constitution. These are the two differences that we find as far as the interim budget and vote on account is considered. Now, this is class number 3. Now, what are the key takeaways from this budget? That is the thing. So, I will be dividing this into two segments: the statistical component and what is the mains component, or what is the so-called, what are the achievements of government of India in the last 10 years. This is the two things that Nirmala Sitharaman has focused. However, UPSC will be asking somewhere around the first component, that is called statistics. Now, every year budget contains components. We know this components of budget is expenditure component, revenue component. In the revenue component, you have revenue receipts and capital receipts, revenue expenses and capital expenses. So we have to look at where money is coming from and where money is going to. That is the heading that you are finding there. Money is coming from and money is going to. So we look at what are the total receipts of the government, incomes of the government, and what is the total expenses of government. After that, we will see what is the deficit to trends in the government. So last year, government of India has announced that in the financial year 2024, India is going to have a fiscal deficit of 5.9% of GDP. But government, because of its fiscal consolidation and fiscal prudence mechanisms, it has successfully contained the fiscal deficit to 5.8% of GDP, and that is one positive side. So continuing with the same fiscal prudence, Finance Minister Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman has announced that in this financial year, that is in the year 2025, government is going to attain a fiscal deficit of 5.1% of GDP. This is due to the increase in revenues and reduced expenses on the capital expenditure front. These are the things that we have to do. So in this video, we will look from where money is coming, from where money is going. That is important for UPSC. What is the fiscal deficit? What is the total GDP of the country? And what is tax to GDP contributions? These things we have to look in detail. And this is the area where, if at all you are preparing for state exams, they are going to fix it. So before that, you should know what is various types of deficits, right? Deficits are classified into 5 types: budget deficit, fiscal deficit, primary deficit, revenue deficit, effective revenue deficit. Budget deficit is total deficit of the budget. Fiscal deficit is in order to overcome this budget deficit, how much borrowings is done by the government. Hence, fiscal deficit indicates the borrowing capacity or borrowing of the government. Primary deficit is in this borrowings how far has been paid to the previous loans. So, fiscal deficit minus loans paid, or money paid to the interest of the previous loans. And then revenue deficit is the deficit in the revenue side, that is revenue expenses minus revenue income. Effective revenue deficit includes something like revenue deficit minus grants given for the states for the creation of capital assets. These are the things that we have in generally for fiscal deficits. So this is very important to look at where money is coming from and where money is going to. I am discussing that component here. The last component will be what are the other features. Now we all know that where money comes from. Money comes from two components in the budget. I always said this. Money comes from this revenue component, that is taxes or non-taxes, and in the capital you have loans, investments done by the foreign investments and disinvestments. How money is coming, that like that we have to see. If you look at tax receipts, what are direct tax receipts, what are indirect money that we are getting, indirect tax money, What are non-tax receipts? SITs, already we know this, services offered by government, interest and dividends received, transfer payments. Capital is this. What is the expenses, revenue expenses and capital expenses? As budget contains these components, we have to look at what is this year's or upcoming year's this thing. After that, we have to look at what is the deficits that we have, right? So let me start with the first thing. So where this was given in the budget document. In the budget document, they have explained this under the highlights of the budget, or you also call it as budget at a glance. So in this, they have explained what are the total aggregates of the budget, that is what is the receipts and expenses of the government, and they have explained what are the terms. Fiscal deficit means, effective revenue deficit means, and then they have explained primary deficit. These things I already explained to you. So what are the first takeaway? So if you look, now they are explaining about what is the total expenditure of Government of India. The total expenditure of Government of India for this fiscal year is going to be 47,65,000 crore rupees. Or you can remember 47.65 lakh crore rupees is the total expenditure for this financial year 2024 and 25. In this, there are two expenses, capital expense and revenue expense. Government of India said that capital expense is going to be 11.11 crores, lakh crores approximately. Now the real terms are given there. So total expenditure for this upcoming year is 47,65,768 crore rupees, whereas the expenditure is in the capital front is 11,11,1111 crores. This is the thing. Now what Government of India is saying is, by increasing this capital expenditure to 11.11 lakh crores, this is 17% higher than 2024. This is something that we have to remember. So total expenses is 47.665 lakh crores. So what does this mean? The total budget for the country is 47.65 lakh crores. So this is the thing. In this there is capital expenditure. The remaining, by the way, is revenue expenditure. Now the question is, from where you are getting this 47.65 lakh crores. So for that you have to know where money is coming from and where money is going. So here in detail they have given what are the total budget estimates for the upcoming year. On the revenue side, how you are getting it. On the capital side, how you are getting it. What are the total receipts, what are the total expenses that Government of India is getting. So if you look at here, the total tax revenues for the upcoming year is 26 lakh crores. And if you look at the non-tax revenues, I am looking at the final or last column. So it is somewhere around 3,99,701 crores. So have a look at this. This is one, this is two. Tax revenues and non-tax revenues. Tax revenues is 26 lakh crores. This is 3.9 lakh crores on the non-tax revenues. So total revenue receipts, taxes plus non-taxes, it is going to be 30 lakh crores. Because we have a capital total expenditure of 47.65 lakh crores. The total expense is this. From where you are getting this 47.65 lakh crores, you are going to get it in the form of revenue receipts somewhere around 30 lakh crores, and in the capital receipts you are going to get it somewhere around 17.64 lakh crores. As a result, total will be 47.64. This is how budget will be prepared. Now if you look what UPSC will ask, if you are writing state exams, they will go into this numbers, 30 lakh crores, 17 lakh crores of capital expenditure, total is 47.6 lakh crores. In this expenditure, you have revenue expenditure, interest payments, grant in aids, so capital account expenditure. These things they will ask in detail along with the numbers, but UPSC won't ask this. Rather, they will ask what is the ascending order of the revenues, what is the ascending order of expenses, or what is the descending order of revenues and what is the descending order of expenses. To understand this, we'll have to look at this. So rupee is coming from, what does this mean? Into the pocket of government, rupee is coming. That is, what is the receipts of government, or what are the various income sources for government. So I said income sources will be revenue income source or revenue receipts, capital receipts. In the revenue receipts you have tax receipts, non-tax receipts. In the capital expenses, loans, investments, disinvestments made by government. Now if you look at this, right, they will ask, look at the major chunk in this pie chart. The major chunk is from the so-called income tax. So highest amount of income is coming from income tax. Out of 1 rupee, 19 rupees is coming from income tax. This is followed by GST and other taxes, and this is followed by corporation tax. And out of all these things, highest money is coming from borrowings. So if you want me to arrange this, in descending order. Money is coming highest from borrowings, that is capital income, followed by income tax, followed by GST or corporation tax, followed by corporation tax. This is the order that you have to remember. So borrowings is highest, followed by income tax. This is followed by corporation tax. Sorry, this is followed by GST, and this is followed by corporation tax. These are the things that you have to remember. Remember the first four. After that, if you look at this, you have non-tax receipts as 5. So just remember the pie chart. Pie chart is important. This might be the question. So money is coming. They will ask you what are the major sources of government's revenue. Borrowings, followed by, see, 30% is around 30% is out of borrowings, followed by income tax, followed by GST, followed by corporation tax, followed by non-tax receipts. So this is the first thing that you have to look. The second thing is where money is going. Where money is going. Now if you look at this, so the major chunk of money is going to state shares as well as interest payments made by the government. This is revenue expenditure. By the way, this contains revenue as well as capital expenditure, this one. So highest amount is going to interest payments, followed or equal to state share. Now this is followed by the second largest share, that is called central sector scheme. What is central sector scheme, guys? It is a scheme where central government will be 100% subsidizing or giving that money, whereas state governments will not be contributing for central sector schemes. So the second component is for central sector scheme. The first one is interest payments and state share is equal. Now what does state share contain? It contains tax devolution as well as other state grants that government of India has given, other grants given to the states. So this is followed by the defense expenses and finance commission expenses. These are the 3 things or 4 things that you have to remember. So interest payments and state share is first expense that government of India is having. This is followed by the so-called central sector schemes. This is followed by the so-called central sponsored schemes, defense and finance commission and other transfers, right? So this is how rupee is going. In detail they have given here. What are the total gross tax revenues? What are the total non-tax revenues? So in the non-tax revenues, interest, dividends, grants, and what are the capital receipts of the government they have given. So these are the things that they have given in detail. And what is the expenditure that government of India is having. Now have a look at it. So you have to remember that component. So expenditure, the highest proportion of expenditure that government is going to have is interest, followed by transport, followed by defense, followed by subsidies. So the larger the rectangle, the larger is the thing that you are going to have here. That is also mentioned in here. So remember what are the major tax sources or what are the revenue sources for government, what are the expenditure for government. That to chronology already I said, state and interest payments, followed by transport, followed by defense. Like this you have these things. So have a look at it. Now even in the subsidies that government is giving, fertilizer subsidy is topping it, followed by food subsidy and followed by fuel subsidy. Now this is not changing from a long time. So fertilizer followed by food followed by fuel is the subsidy that it is giving. So this is the revenue component, this is the expenses component of budget. So this is what they have given, the profile. So the budget is 47.66 lakh crore size. In this they have given what is the tax receipts or non-tax receipts. The one that you are finding here is the revenue side and this is the capital side. So the top one is capital side, the revenue side is this. Total is budget side is 47.66 lakh crore rupees. Now what is the expenses? Government expenses are classified into these types. No need to remember into that much. Just remember the order that I have said. So this is the first one, incomes and expenses. Now